Hi, I'm Milla and welcome to another Milla's Game Room video. This video is going to be a bit more quick, impromptu, semi-scripted as I talk about the ToHeart Remake and why you should be excited for it. Now, ToHeart Remake has unironically become one of my most anticipated games of the year, if not the most anticipated, for a bunch of reasons, and a lot of it relates to its context, its legacy, what it means, and a bunch of other things that, if you don't know much about visual novels, video games, anime, or even just, yet alone AQUAPLUS in general, you might not realise how much of a big deal this is. So I'm going to walk you through this game from a beginner's perspective to get you up to speed and maybe pique your interest in picking this game up too. I've split this up into 9 sections that I'm going to talk about, so just follow along with the timestamps below, starting with number 1. ToHeart is from an iconic developer. Now, AQUAPLUS are best known outside of Japan for the Utah series nowadays, but their legacy branches out a lot more than that, especially once you consider games that are either trapped on legacy hardware in the West, or have been released in Japan dating right way back to the mid-1990s. This includes the Tears to Tiara series, Dungeon Travelers series, the White Album series, which I obsess about way too much, a bunch of other obscure games as well, which you probably may or may not heard of. Monochrome Mobis was the most recent example. But before all of those games came ToHeart. ToHeart 1 was AQUAPLUS's breakout hit. It was originally a PC game that you can guess contains adult content. It's very typical for these legacy VN developers to have those roots, but thanks to it doing so well, AQUAPLUS fully remade the game for the PlayStation 1 and did an anime adaptation to tie in with it as well, and ToHeart ultimately coincided in becoming a mainstream anime franchise back in the late 1990s. It cemented AQUAPLUS, then operating mainly under their adult brand Leaf, as one of the 2 most influential and iconic VN developers of the late 1990s alongside Key. And if it wasn't for ToHeart, we wouldn't have 1, and if we didn't have 1, we wouldn't have all the stuff the Key staff made, like Clanad and Little Busters. And for the record, a lot of Key stuff, if not everything now, has come out in English officially, so yep, AQUAPLUS helped indirectly inspire the creators who worked on that, as well as When They Cry. Bowl of Rentals did a fantastic 1-hour retrospective on Leaf and talked about this legacy and impact, which I highly recommend you check out because that is a whole video in itself and that video is fantastic. But what about ToHeart specifically? Well, that brings me on to the next point. ToHeart is the original moege. To understand a bit more about what I mean by this, let's briefly sum up the game's story. In ToHeart, you play as Fujita Hiroyuki, a high school student who cares more about romance than studying. He needs to make the right decisions to win over the hearts and minds of fellow students he likes. So if that premise sounds familiar to you, that's because ToHeart built the framework for what we now know as the moege. This is the most popular genre of romance visual novel and is what many associate with the visual medium. And that does include visual novel gameplay elements within other titles, as well as romance more generally, like Persona, Trails, Sakura Wars, Summer Night, Growlanza, and a bunch of other things. Now, moege is a heterosexual romance where you play as a guy, usually written as cis-het, where you can date women. Their focus in moege is to be light-hearted, warm, and comedic. They can include adult content, but contrary to what a very vocal minority of that fanbase thinks, is not a requirement. It is purely text-based, where there is no gameplay at all outside of choices, but maybe the rare minigame, which differs to dating sims like Tokimeki Memorial and Angelique from Ruby Party. Without ToHeart, we may not have moege or other subgenres like Otome, Yuri, and BL in how we know them today. AQUAPLUS essentially is to moege what Ruby Party is to Otome games, and I talked about Ruby Party in a video before, please go check that out as well, I'll leave a link to that in the description. The ToHeart Remake specifically is getting a simultaneous worldwide release, which brings me on to point number 3. Now, worldwide releases of video games are a big deal, we get them as standard nowadays, but for visual novels in particular, this is a particularly big deal. AQUAPLUS have been working towards this for a while, with Shiravune handling PC publishing, mostly focusing on ports but has since expanded to new titles. They previously did this with Monochrome Mobius back in 2022, which definitely had some issues, but it's been handled pretty well at this point. Shiravune is the subsidiary of DMM Games, who AQUAPLUS have had a very long working relationship with. For the 2010s, it was the only place where you could buy the legacy Leaf titles digitally before they delisted them. So that's how long AQUAPLUS and DMM Games have had a close business relationship for. This game's debut just shows how much VNs are growing outside of Japan, alongside AQUAPLUS's genuine desire to expand, which I'll come back to a little later. Interestingly, this game will also have a physical PC collector's edition with a Steam code as well, making that version really good for collectors, whether it's for PC stuff in Japan, internationally, considering how rare we get this stuff too. It also includes a re-release of the ToHeart anime. And I mentioned the anime earlier because it was similarly iconic in its own right. It is pretty good. I've heard that the people who watched it, they do really like it. VN adaptations do tend to be a bit of a mixed bag, but ToHeart, from what I've heard, is one of the better ones. If you've watched the ToHeart anime, what are your thoughts on it? Please let me know in the comments down below. It's also available digitally too, which is really interesting, so you can get it on Steam as well. But Steam's not the only place you can pick it up, because this brings me on to number 4. It's on the Nintendo Switch as well. Now, I have been quite annoyingly vocal in the past about AQUAPLUS and their hesitancy to support the platform. I won't go into it again here, I'll just link you to my other videos. If you're new to AQUAPLUS games, this is the main thing that I want you to take away. ToHeart is one of the best starting points you could possibly have to explore the world of AQUAPLUS games. The other ones, for the record, are Utawaremono and White Album 2 for different reasons, but ToHeart coming to Switch makes it a perfect portable game as well. The Switch version is also available physically in both standard and limited editions on a cartridge as well, so pretty much the same as PC. At the time of this video, which I'm making in very late February, early March, it's not confirmed whether the Japanese physical Switch release will have multi-language support. A lot of visual novel companies, especially Dramatic Create and Prototype, try to heavily market when their games are multi-language, but we haven't had that here yet. The PC version is already confirmed to have English and simplified Chinese. If the Switch cart is multi-language, it'll have the same, but even if the Switch cart doesn't have English in it at launch, or Chinese, I'm confident we will get them at some point, because whether it's a late patch or an actual worldwide release licensed by NIS America or another company, I feel pretty certain we'll get it, because they are leaving money on the table by not doing so. It is the Nintendo Switch after all. It prints money. Even after the Switch 2 comes out, the Switch will continue to print money. If you are a Switch collector, I recommend keeping an eye on this as well. This brings me on to number 5. ToHeart Remake is a full-price game sold at a budget price. In the Famitsu interview, which was released recently to coincide with the game, we got a few tidbits on it, so I've got to reference a couple of these in the rest of the video. Between AQUAPLUS COO Naoya Shimokawa and the director Tsutomu Washimi, they developed the ToHeart Remake as a full-price game. However, they are releasing it at a lower price to encourage more people to buy it, which is a really good thing. Now, as somebody who loves VNs, and a lot of people who are familiar with VNs will be questioning, why should we buy this visual novel at full price when it's literally just pictures and reading? This is a perception that we have to deal with. If you're more of a casual, it's a little more understandable, but if you're more into the genre, you understand it, and it can be really frustrating. But the fact that this remake is going to get a more budget price tag is really good. Given the iconic legacy of ToHeart, it does appeal to more casual audiences as well. It convinces more people to potentially buy into something and try something new. And there are some new things with this which I've not touched on yet, but if you know what this is with the 3D stuff, we get into that as well. If you are more budget strapped, this is something that should be on your radar as a full-size game at a budget price. Can't go wrong here. The sixth thing I want to touch on is that everyone is voiced. Now, I'm one of those people that strongly prefers voice characters in visual novels to the point where it can be an access issue, and I've talked about in my Otome game videos about unvoiced heroines. For this game, AQUAPLUS have really gone to town with the voice actors. You've got the original voice cast from the PlayStation 1 original that are all back. There's been a brand new voice cast for this 2025 remake that have also been added, so you've got 2 voice casts you can switch between. And this is the cool part, the protagonist Fujita Hiroyuki is now fully voiced for the first time, which is another feature AQUAPLUS have carried over from their newer games. If you've played White Album 2 or the Utawaremono Mask games, you will know how fantastic the voice acting is and how much it greatly aids immersion. And it'd be interesting to see them apply this newer philosophy to a remake of one of their oldest works. This also ties into number 7 a bit, because ToHeart Remake showcases AQUAPLUS's continued desire to innovate. Now, Naoya Shimokawa has spoken about how for a while he's also wanted to further innovate visual novels, and a quote from the Famitsu interview translates to something like, "We're taking it from visual novel to visual cinema." And this is why ToHeart Remake's art style has moved to full 3D models, which is something they have experimented on in the past, long before they even began localizing their games. While some people are a bit unsure, I think it looks great, and I really do like to see that AQUAPLUS, a pretty large developer, well, who are owned by a larger company, are experimenting like this. And if you've seen the Western games industry especially, you'll know how bad it is where companies just can't experiment. So even if the ToHeart Remake turns out to be quite inferior to the original game, we should still support this game because it tried to experiment, if that makes sense. I still think we should praise AQUAPLUS for experimenting this way. And related to that, I want to talk about AQUAPLUS wanting to expand the series, which is number 8. As part of this Famitsu interview, AQUAPLUS expressed a desire to continue the ToHeart series, including a remake of ToHeart 2. Now they did say the caveat, oh, if ToHeart Remake sells well, we'll do it, but what that probably means is, we want to do ToHeart 2 Remake, but please buy this game so we can have your money, so we can do it anyway. Don't buy this game just because you want to see ToHeart 2 get remade, buy it because you want to play ToHeart 1. And ToHeart 2, that actually has a full fan translation. Back in 2014 it came out. If you've read VNs for a while in the mid-2010s or even afterwards, you've probably already played it. Fans who've played it have rated it positively. That's left an impact of its own, including appearances in games we have got in English already, like the first Dungeon Travelers game. Personally, I don't think ToHeart 2 needs a remake. I would strongly prefer an official re-release of the PlayStation 3 version, subtitled DX+, as it's bundled with Another Days, and also still looks absolutely beautiful. If you've played the White Album remake, that version of the game uses the motion portrait system, which also appeared in ToHeart 2 DX+'s version, and it looks amazing, and I really want to see that. And hopefully with now I've got a Steam Deck, the eyes are going to look great. As in, not that deformed mess that happens rarely on graphics cards. Also, AQUAPLUS says there's no plans for a ToHeart 3. Now, I want to caveat this by saying that I touched on this more in my Tears 2 video, because in their fan club newsletter that they released in January 2024, they did confirm that they did try to work on ToHeart 3 with Maruto Fumiaki, who wrote White Album 2. For various reasons it didn't work out, and this was alongside a third Tears game, so they have tried. There may be a chance it comes back in the future, but even not, there's still lots of legacy stuff that's yet to come outside of Japan, which does bring me on to number 9, but it won't be their last legacy title. So even if ToHeart Remake does not interest you, Naoya Shimakawa has expressed publicly in older interviews a desire to revisit and revive older IP. He specifically named ToHeart, which we're getting now, White Album, we got the first game on PC in 2023, and they're heavily hinting at bringing a sequel over at some point, which I will be shilling, just to let you all know. And the third title was Comic Party, which we've heard nothing from, but I'm expecting that one to come after this one, but we'll save that discussion for another day, because Comic Party also has its own iconic legacy. Plus it does tie into AQUAPLUS's porting spree, and I do want to add that historically AQUAPLUS were really known for porting their games and making them available on modern platforms. They did this a lot during the PS2 and PSP era, where they ported everything to their platforms that they already had on consoles, and then they brought a few titles to the PS3 as well, so ToHeart 2 as I mentioned before, White Album 2, and also ported Apache Slot spin-off game, which that's a bit wild, and then some for the Vita, but then after they got absorbed by Yuminosora Holdings, they stopped. We don't know why they did stop, but now they've changed parent companies to Hike, they're starting again. So in a way they're returning to their past by porting all their titles over, but now with a more global outreach. So we're going to see more stuff from them, expect more stuff to come. We've already got ports announced at the time of this video, including Utawa no Zan and Aquapaza, which is a really good little fighting game. So even if ToHeart doesn't interest you, other ones will. And that's a good time to segue into ending the video. So thank you so much for listening and watching. What are your thoughts on the ToHeart Remake? What are your thoughts on potential other titles? Please let me know in the comments down below. And also like, comment, subscribe, algorithm boosting stuff. Consider becoming a channel member if you can afford to do so and want to. Thank you so much everybody. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.